What is Title IX? In this video, we will introduce this landmark civil rights legislation and discuss how it impacts you during your time here at Whittier College and beyond. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 is here on your screen. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Sounds simple, right? Well, it is and it isn't. Since it was signed into law by President Richard Nixon, Title IX has undergone a series of evolutions, particularly as our country shifts between presidential administrations. While the efforts behind Title IX were initially intended to eliminate discrimination in academic hiring and admissions, Title IX quickly transformed into a law that addressed inequalities in college athletics. Over its first few decades, Title IX completely altered the landscape of college athletics, drastically increasing women's access and participation. It did this primarily through the implementation of what's known as the three-part test, a test intended to ensure not only equal opportunity, but also equal outcome. As Title IX continued to evolve, it was increasingly applied to sexual harassment and sexual violence. Over a number of important Supreme Court rulings, not only was sexual harassment seen as a form of discrimination that inhibited students' equal access to education, but schools were also increasingly held accountable when instances of sex-based discrimination occurred. By the end of the 1990s, schools were legally obligated to enact both preventative and proactive measures against sexual harassment in schools. These developments, combined with the Clery Act of 1990 and the Violence Against Women Act of 1994, forced schools to devise and implement clear and consistent policies regarding how to prevent sexual violence on campuses, what disciplinary actions will follow reports of sexual misconduct, and what rights and resources a survivor of sexual violence is entitled to. More recently, Title IX has continued to undergo changes. In 2011, the Obama administration issued its Dear Colleague letter, which stipulated new guidelines meant to protect survivors and speed up adjudication processes. For instance, it required schools to adopt a preponderance standard, which means schools are to proceed assuming that it is more likely than not that the sexual assault did in fact occur. This is different from the beyond a reasonable doubt standard used in criminal trials. The new guidelines also included provisions to minimize stress on survivors, such as notifying survivors of developments of the case as it proceeds. And just in the last couple years, Title IX is again undergoing changes as transgender students' rights are increasingly inserted into public and political debate. While the Trump administration took actions to limit transgender students' access to college athletics, the Biden administration has taken steps to reverse these limitations, with new policy regulations soon to be outlined this coming fall. So, where does all of this evolution leave us? Despite the many transformations Title IX has undergone, some key aspects remain consistent and central. First, it's a civil right that prohibits sex discrimination in education. It also applies to all students regardless of gender identity. Schools cannot retaliate against someone filing a complaint. Schools must keep complainants safe from retaliatory harassment. Schools must ensure you don't share campus with your abuser. Schools can issue no contact directives to prevent interaction. Schools must be proactive to keep campuses discrimination-free. Schools cannot discourage you from continuing your education. Schools must have an established plan for handling complaints, and all schools receiving federal funding are subject to Title IX. Again, all Whittier College students are protected regardless of identity or affiliation. That means all gender identities and expressions, all members of the LGBTQIA2S+ community, all races, religions, and ethnicities, students of all physical and mental ability, and regardless of citizenship status. If you have questions about Title IX, about reporting a violation, or about seeking protections or accommodations, you can reach out to the Title IX coordinator who is located in the Campus Center, Building A, first floor within the Dean of Students office. Or you can seek out one of our Deputy Title IX coordinators. You can also take advantage of excellent resources both on and off campus. So, to wrap up, Title IX is a civil right that prohibits sex and gender discrimination at Whittier College. Whittier College is committed to protecting its students, faculty, and staff. So we take accusations of discrimination seriously and will do everything we can to make Whittier a safe and welcoming campus. We look forward to having you join us in those efforts.